Which brings me to my next point, because people say you're such an extremist, you're an abolitionist. Okay, well, listen to how possible it would be to do some real damage to their ideology. There is a date. Now in Massachusetts, it's October 1st. You'll have to find out what it is for your state, but I'd say get on the stick, and whether you know the date or not, do this now, because it probably hasn't hit yet. If it has, I'm sorry, but there is a date in every state that is the cutoff point for funding for the year. And it may be for the semester. Again, check your state. In Massachusetts for the year, I'm pretty sure North Carolina it is as well. But anyway, you withdraw your child, you unenroll your child before that date. Not on that date, it's too late. But before that date, you unenroll. And that day is the day that the enrollment is decides the funding for the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens if you got 50% of the district to just mass unenroll? It's like a strike. It's a walkout, but passively. You don't have to make a protest. You don't have to no one publicly is going to know your name. That's the beauty of this. The school will know your name, and yeah, you'll be like, we unenroll, but they don't know why. They don't know if it was health reasons or you moved out of town, or they don't know why. You don't have to tell them. You just have to unenroll. And then you do have, depending on your state, a certain number of days to sign up for homeschool, get in a private school, move out of town, or whatever. They're not going to come after the truancy officer's not coming after you the next day.
Right.
So you unenroll through whatever process there is. The day arrives. Your student is not counted. That's money they don't have. Now, is it dollar for dollar the $17,000 that they were going to have, or whatever thousands they were going to have on your child? No, but it's a sizable chunk. And across, let's say, even 30%, it's huge money. And here's what they will have to do if they're underfunded. They can't just tax you more that year. They can't. They have to first pay teachers. They have to first deal with their obligations that are contractual and so forth, and provide the bare minimum. They have to provide the minimum education. They can't not do that. So people will tell you you're hurting their students. No, you're not. You know you're hurting. They can't go dip into that COVID money now and hire all the diversity people.
I was going to say the diversity officers.
All those new people who are not the bare minimum essential instructors. Now, are they? Mm-hmm. So if you really want to defund this garbage, you're not going to do it by electing or unelecting people. That's too long. It takes too long. You're going to do it, and you're going to do it fast by remembering that you're Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and you have the power in your little ruby red slippers. Click your heels together and go home. Take your kid and stay home. You would be doing them a favor anyway, but even if you went back a week later, 2 weeks later, take a brief vacation, hire a babysitter, take the tech away and sit them in front of documentaries, and they'd be better off than with the garbage that's going on right now with a mask. Don't mask. Oh, you're quarantined. Stay home. And guess what? Your kid could be sent home quarantined right now, but as long as they're enrolled, even without a virtual option. But if they're enrolled, they're getting the money.
Mm-hmm.
So when they have your kids and your money, they have zero incentive to do anything. And they don't have any incentive anyway, but they have less than zero. But here's what they can't do. They can't go, we can hire and buy and plan and do all these wonderful diversity, equity, inclusion things. They can't do it if they have to dip into their funds and their budget to pay their bills.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking big blows financially.
I love this idea. This is like a punk rock idea. We need to have more of these ideas and talking about these types of strategies, because this is something that you could just get a little quiet group of parents in your community together who are fed up and have had enough, and just coordinate to all do exactly the same thing. Right. And you don't have to be public about it. You don't need to make a big video that splashes on YouTube or anything like that, so you don't end up getting in trouble later. I think this is brilliant. Deb, where can people go and look for the date?
Well, I want to ask, okay, so one of the people in the chat, Lady J reads, and I know her name, I apologize. I'm blanking right now. She's in Michigan, and she put up the count dates. Michigan has multiple count dates. So she must have gone there somewhere to find it. Somewhere, yeah. So Michigan count dates are October 6th, November 10th, November 17th, March 23rd. So there are different dates. And you could play this game every single one.
Mm-hmm.
There's no law against it. Pull out on October, pull out now for October 6th. Pull out November 1st for November 10th. Pull out, dude. They can't turn you away if you show back up and you go, oh, we're not moving after all.
Our bad.
Oopsie.
Sorry.
We're re-enrolling. Whatever. And in the meanwhile, you can still have your kid, you had the syllabus or whatever. You're just whatever, do some work. And you might think, well, isn't this going to hurt their grades? Now, I can't speak to people who are junior, senior in high school, or, they got to worry about transcripts and everything. But if you have kids in elementary school, there's no excuse. They're not learning jack diddly right now.
No.
I'm sorry. They're not.
And I'll even say this, and I don't even know if you know this. I was a college admissions counselor for like the first 5 years of my career. So I actually was one of those people that was like reviewing transcripts to get kids into college. I'll even tell you what, as long as the last 2 years were good and maybe the first couple years were like stable, as long as the last 2 years are good, it doesn't matter. For like 90% of colleges out there, it does not matter.
No, it doesn't. And honest to God, like, so I think if you try to post links, it might not work for you. What you might have to do is, if you can send me links, and I will send them to Carlin and she'll get them out. But you guys, you have to do this like yesterday. Justice is right. I read in the comments.
Yeah.
You got to get on this like now. Okay. For the fall count. Every state's going to have a fall count. And it's probably in October, and it's probably, or end of September. It's probably coming up right now. And the reason is they can't really do it like September 1st because kids are still enrolling and the stuff is all in flux. But they're going to settle in and count very soon. And you got to get out soon. No, if you're worried about the law, because there'll be people saying like, oh, go to hslda.org, which is the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and click on legal and then your state's homeschool laws. And that will tell you what your notification process is for letting them know that you're unenrolling or you're doing something else. And so just to make sure what your length of grace period is, it doesn't mean you have to create a homeschool. Okay. Just at least go check the law to find out like how many days you have, to let them know what the process is for unenrollment. Can you send an email? Do you need to send a letter? What do you need to do? But do it right now. And if you can get those percentages up, that means the dollars go down.
Let's just look at that.
That will do so much more than any school board meeting you could ever attend.
So this is the website that we're looking for?
No. HSLDA.
Oh.
HSLDA.org.
Sorry. Oh, obviously that's not obvious. That's obviously not the right one.
See legal.
That's better.
If you go to legal and you say state homeschool laws.
Oh. There we go.
And you click that. And this tells you what states. Oh, look, they've changed the colors.
Oh,
that tells you how hard it is to homeschool in those states.
Let's go to moderate regulation in New Hampshire.
Okay. So then if you go to the, how you go to their steps, if you sort of scroll down, it'll tell you step 1 and whatever. Actually click on full details. Go up and click on full details right there. View complete details. And that should take you to, there's a little video below the video.
Oh, wow.
There are steps. Provide appropriate notification to the authorities. And it says parents are required to file an initial notice with a participating agency in the following situations: within 5 days of commencing a homeschool program or upon moving into a new school district and changing participating agencies. So typically when you unenroll, that's kind of like, just I unenroll. I'm not going to be coming to your school anymore. Like I said, you probably have at least that 5 days to figure something else out. Okay. But if you have any doubts, call HSLDA. Now, I do recommend people join. They're a wonderful organization. It's a very small fee. Then, you get more attention. But look it up. How do I unenroll for my school district? And like I said, they're not going to come to your door. You just say, I'm unenrolling. If they ask you why, I say, well, we're planning a move. Or there's a health concern. Or whatever. It's not really any of their business. I would say 99% of the time, they're not going to ask you why. They're only going to wonder why if you're still living there and, it's like a month later and nobody's done anything, then you might get into trouble. But only if somebody says anything about it. So the way you protect yourself is know what the laws are. But unenrolling is not illegal. You can do that in any state because they don't know why you're doing it. And you have the right to do that.
I find this map a little fascinating. Just in terms of like how hard it is this is how hard the regulations for homeschooling?
Yes. High regulation, but even in a high regulation state. So click, and remember, Vermont was one of the states I said the school boards have control over curriculum. Right. So, I mean, every toothless wonder can get a gun, easily in Vermont, but you can't homeschool your kids. So, and I'm 2A rights. I'm just saying it's funny what they think.
I grew up in Vermont. I know exactly what you're talking about.
The freedoms that you have and the freedoms you don't have. It's hilarious. So, and then what this site has is it has, all the different, the steps sent a written enrollment notice. So they have, every state has it a little different. Look what they make you do. Submit a narrative.
Yes. Wow.
That you have to describe the content provided each subject area. That's high regulation, you guys. That's high. Click on California and Texas. Oh, blow click on California.
Oh my god.
You would think California would be really high, right? But actually North Carolina is higher. You don't have to here. There's different options. First, we have multiple options of homeschooling.
Yeah.
And then when you go into them, let's say just as a home-based private school, you just, you
submit a form.
You just submit a form and whatever. Okay. You have multiple ways of doing it. So different states have different ways of doing it. And that's for homeschooling. But I'm not suggesting, although I am suggesting you homeschool, but if you don't want to do that, but you want to strike a blow, you're just like, I'm sick of this garbage. And I want to do something that actually matters, even if I'm the only one who's doing it. Unenroll before the count date and then re-enroll after the count date.
Why not? Oh, that disappeared. There she is. She's back.
Why not? What's to stop you? So, that's kind of, and that's an example of doing something that's effective that they can stop you from doing. And that's somewhat silent. It's like you're voting with your feet. And
I do think it's important that people start getting creative about this. And again, I think that, if you're just getting into it, I think going and making a speech at the school board, maybe if you don't mind being public and getting put on a list somewhere, I don't mind it necessarily. But again, I just think we need to start having realistic conversations about what is that actually going to achieve. George Andre Veloso Nunez says, about the thing we need to hear 7 times to entertain a notion. Be one of those who say it. If nobody does, it will never reach that number. That's correct. Exactly right.
Yeah. My reasoning when I started my channel was, twofold. One, I felt like morally obligated. Like if I know things and I see things that are wrong, I have to call them out because I have children. Well, even myself. I mean, I'm in this world and how dare I know this and not share this information? Mm-hmm. And then of course you encouraged me and said, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, high production values or whatever. Just start creating, just start getting it out there. So that was, whatever your preferred method is, folks. If you do well with sending text to people, if you do well with writing emails, if you do well with making a video, even if it's private, this is the newfangled pamphlet era. If you don't know what that is, that's the pre-revolution, American Revolutionary period where they were just sending out pamphlets. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't have anybody's name on them. And half the time, like the Crown was like, who produced this? Well, I don't know. I just found it. I don't know what you're talking about. And like, I wouldn't even discount going back to old fashioned pamphleteering.
No,
because, print can work sometimes too.
I'm going to be honest, and this is not directly related to education, but it is directly related to pamphleting. When I decided to join the Mises Caucus in the Libertarian Party, it was all because 2 members of the Mises Caucus in New Hampshire me and my husband went out for a beer with them and they handed me a pamphlet. And that pamphlet had an 8-point platform that articulated everything I needed to know. And that was what got me to join. And so I absolutely, it's
a lot harder to trace than an IP address too.
It's harder to trace, but also people don't read information when it's on a screen. They do read it a lot better when it's on paper. And especially if it's laid out and it's just very simple, you don't need to be worried about it. Think of it as something to just whet people's appetite.
That's correct. So, I mean, obviously some pamphleteers got caught and they got in trouble, but we're talking about,
we're not cutting off hands anymore. Deb.
No, but but also understand something. There are very few people right now in this country who own access to information. And even here, we're talking on YouTube, but if they wanted to shut this off, they could do it right now. They could remove this video.
We're on locals.
They could throttle it. They could do all kinds of things. Yes, it's why we're both on locals. Mm-hmm. So the one thing they can't literally do without massive disruption is to shut us literally up. So when you're out in your community, talk to people. Mm-hmm. And I was in just helping my kid buy a phone. Mm-hmm. All right. And we're in the AT&T store. This young guy's kind of got long hair and whatever, but he works there. He seems like a good guy. And I'm just talking to my daughter, a little more audibly than I needed to be, maybe, but about stuff. And I didn't bring up anything political. I just talked about principles. I just talked about, for example, we walked into the store. There was no sign saying we had to wear a mask. And so we walked in and said, is there a mask requirement? Mm-hmm. And the guy said, no, it's whatever you guys want to do, but thank you for asking. And I said, well, we're just trying to be polite, but Thank you for not making us wear one, right?
Yeah.
He says, I have to wear one, but you don't. So, he said, and he goes, and then you could tell a little in the tone when he said, I have to wear one. So I'm sitting there talking to him. I said, God, I wish you didn't have to. And I'm going to talk to my daughter. I said, this stink. This poor guy, he's got to be here all day, whatever. And the government thinks they know better. So I'm talking in general terms. I'm not talking Republican, Democrat, anything. Same with schools. Same with schools. How is it the government thinks they know what's best for our kids? That could cover like 50 different topics. That covers sex ed, that covers gender ideology, that covers race, that covers everything. Even if you disagree with your neighbor, chances are the one thing you could agree on is that on some issue, they think the government's overreaching.
Yeah.
That's probably an area where you might not agree on which avenue they're overreaching, but there's probably an area where they're overreaching in their mind. And if you stay there, you're still got a place of common ground to talk to them about these things. And once you get there, now you have a platform from which to talk about your thing. So, for example, if they're already like, well, I don't know, I think the critical race theory stuff, and you'd be like, well, steelman it. I'm real concerned about racism. So I hear you. I'm concerned about racism too. But, I just wonder if it's really teaching our kids compassion and acceptance and tolerance to make them like really hyper aware of race all the time, as opposed to just teaching them that they're not so freaking special. That their way isn't the best way all the time. And that maybe they need to be a little humble and maybe they need to recognize they don't know everything. Because I'll tell you something, that speaks to people across cultures. They're like, oh, you mean you don't want your kid to be little Mr. or Ms. Special?
Right.
I'm down with that. Okay. That gets to the same issue. But if you're, and you're like, well, why would that work though? Like, why would it make someone feel bad about themselves? How would that help?
Yeah.
And it's a question that people don't often ask. So maybe the person who thinks it's a good idea goes, yeah, that's a good point. And if you come with your receipts and you go, because to me, like, this looks like they're trying to make Johnny feel like crap. Yeah. And they're trying to make this kid sound like he can never get ahead. I don't know. It just doesn't seem, it's counterintuitive.
Like what I hear you saying is like, play dumb. Play like, I think the people watching this right now or who will watch it later, you probably know more about this stuff than the average bear. Right. And so it can be really easy and frankly feel really good to go into a conversation and be like, well, did you think about X, Y, B, and Z and this way? And give all the facts that you know because you spent countless hours watching YouTube and you've watched me and you've watched Deb or you've watched everyone else talk about it and you know your stuff. Great. That doesn't mean it's the best strategy when you're trying to appeal to like people who don't know what's going on. And especially if those people are on different political ends of the aisle. And I think we're so locked in this gridlock now where it's just everything is very tribal. Everything is about my team winning. And I think, something that I don't think a lot of people understand when they, get really into like YouTube and this stuff, well, let me ask you this. Like for me, how I would have a conversation in person with someone is extremely different than what I'm going to put out on my channel.
Sure.
It's not the same thing. It's not the same tone. It's not the same, I'm going to ask more questions. I'm going to try to sit back and learn about what they care about. I'm going to try to suss out what are the most important things to them. If I want to change someone's mind, I'm going to totally slow play that conversation. I'm not going to go in like the bull in the china shop. Now, you're a little bullish in the china shop too on your YouTube channel. Are you the same way in person?
No.
No.
Of course not. We all have a little more leeway when we're in this medium. And I know it's sort of a self-selected audience. There'll be people come to my channel and just be like, you're offensive. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not for you. But in person, certainly not. I try to meet people where they are. And most people in reality, and even if I met someone from my YouTube audience in person, I would probably be a little bit softer. Like I'm the same person in person with a little less caffeinated, like, down a notch. Okay. Yeah. So I do try to be effective. Like my number one goal, remember, first and foremost, I was a teacher. So I'm not interested in winning an argument. I'm not, it's not about winning or losing. I have the prize in sight. And my goal is, and always has been, protect these kids. And in case you're wondering what I mean by that, like, let's get an operational definition of protect children. Okay. Mm-hmm. I firmly believe that every child can learn. Okay. Whatever even special needs you might come into this world with, every child can learn. I also firmly believe that not every child is going to learn at the same pace or the same amount or to the same degree of depth. I do believe there's something called talent, intellect, whatever you want to call it. That said, I do think that every child has a right to learn. So in other words, right to access the learning at to whatever they can do and get as far as they can go. What I think is wrong and harmful is to get in any of their way. So whether you're going to get in the way of the special needs child by saying, you're learning too slowly, so we're going to stick you in a room and just kind of ignore you, or whether you get in the way of the gifted child or the child with a lot of talent and say you're learning too quickly and you need too much challenge and you're making everybody else look bad, or we can't deal with you or whatever, so we got to slow you down. I think that is harmful. I think that is a usurpation of their right to be who they are, to learn and grow and achieve at their rate. However, you're never going to get equity. Equity is not in the cards there. Equity of equality of opportunity ought to be there, but you're never going to get equity of outcome. It's not going to happen. It's against nature. We're not born equal, and we're never going to. No school, no class, no nothing is going to make us equal, except if it's equally ignorant.